It's truly an honor for me to be a part of this presentation today, to recognize the survivors who have joined us as well as to honor the memories of the 6 million who lost their lives during the Holocaust. Today's proclamation comes at the culmination of the period of the time known as the Days of Remembrance, a long-standing tradition begun in 1979 by U.S. House Joint Resolution sponsored by Senator Danforth of Missouri. I was pleased to attend with the Councilmembers Glass and Friedson and the county executive as well, the annual community-wide Holocaust commemoration sponsored by the JCRC this past Sunday. This moving ceremony brings together our community to reinforce the lessons of the Shoah, to remember and to rededicate ourselves to educating future generations so that they too will never forget. Tomorrow, May 8th, makes exactly 74 years to the day that the war ended. We were fortunate one Sunday to have heard from our own Manny Mandel, whose birthday happens to be tomorrow as well. And of those of you who don't know, his daughter is my chief of staff, Lisa, who shared some of his story of survival. And again, reminded us to learn from our past so that we do not risk repeating it. Did you want to say, please?
I want to thank everybody standing here for being with us today, for persisting, for resisting, for fighting, and speaking out. The Nazis were masters of division. They divided countries, they divided communities, they divided continents and the world, and they also divided their prisoners. For those who were in a Nazi concentration camp, the Jews were instructed to wear Jewish stars, 2 triangles. Political prisoners, those who expressed progressive political views, were instructed to wear inverted red triangles. Members of the LGBTQ community were instructed to wear pink triangles. And prisoners of war themselves were instructed to wear red triangles. And my maternal grandfather was one of those individuals who wore a red triangle. He was in the Air Force and flew as an engineer B-12 bombers and was in the Stalag 17 prison camp for nearly 20 months, fighting for our country, fighting for his people, fighting for the world, and the Russians ended up saving him and rescuing him. And while my grandfather, much like all survivors, are hesitant to talk about their endeavors, talk about what they went through, now more than ever, we need to remember their stories. We need to remember that things in this world don't come easily, and freedom is never free. And as hatred and violence rears its ugly head again, we have to speak out and say, never again.
We stand here today in a solemn obligation to bear witness for the lost and for the living, and to bear a shared responsibility to tell the stories. And that's why it is so humbling to be here. Consider for a moment that if we held a minute of silence for each of the 6 million Jews who were murdered in the Holocaust, we would be standing here in silence for 11 consecutive years. 11 years. Each survivor who's here, who I am just humbled to stand with, each of their children, their grandchildren, and their children to come are an act of defiance against the darkest hatred I think we've ever seen in world history. And just like their living is an act of defiance, their being here is an act of defiance against hate, our succumbing to the disease of indifference is an act of surrender against hate. So that's why I am honored and humbled to be here to do what I consider to be one of our most important obligations, to stand together in solidarity as a community here and as communities across the world to stand up against hatred, to stand up against oppression, to stand up against genocide, against anyone and anywhere.
I was very moved to attend the ceremony on Sunday, and it's hard standing up there, and even I had to read a few names, and just to read the name of people who died in the camps and how old they were and when they died, in a very short period of time, I read the names of children and adults and seniors and everybody in between. And it's a hard thing to do because you think about all the lost lives that are represented, and I was just reading a fraction of the people who lost their lives. I am continually reminded by what happened of what happens when someone's allowed to define other human beings as the other, the outsider, somebody you can hate and somebody you can despise and somebody who you don't value as a human being. And if there's any lesson that we need to take from this, it's not just the remembrance of those who died and what happened then, but it's an acknowledgement that those forces still exist in the world. And there are people out there who choose to foment division and hate. And when you dehumanize other human beings, and you can do to one person, you could do to any person. I think Evan's point about everybody had a triangle, and once you were allowed to dehumanize and destroy one person, the list of people you could destroy becomes endless. So I was very moved by what I participated in. Thank you for the work you're doing, and we need to remember.
Thank you. We have a proclamation, and accepting the proclamation is Ayana Tuval. Please. Whereas the Holocaust was the state-sponsored systematic persecution and annihilation of European Jews by Nazi Germany and its collaborators between 1933 and 1945, and while Jews were the primary target, 6 million were murdered. Other ethnic and religious groups also were victimized, and
whereas, pursuant to a 1980 Act of Congress, the United States Holocaust Memorial Council designates days of remembrance each year to recall and reflect on the horrible crimes committed during the Holocaust and to ensure that the memory and legacy of live loss will not be forgotten, and
whereas we have a responsibility to those who perished as well as to those who survived to educate current and future generations and rededicate ourselves to the history of the Holocaust and its impact on the world, and
whereas on Sunday, May 5th, 2019, the Jewish Community Relations Council of Greater Washington hosted a community-wide Holocaust commemoration, Yom HaShoah, at B'nai Israel congregation with the themes of memory and legacy, which included testimony from a survivor, as well as second and third generation speakers.
And whereas JCRC continues to make sure the memories of victims and lessons of the Holocaust are never forgotten through the JCRC Holocaust Survivors Speakers Bureau, as well as many other programs, now therefore it be resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland, hereby recognizes Thursday, May 2nd, 2019, as Holocaust Remembrance Day, Yom HaShoah, in Montgomery County. And be it further resolved that all residents are urged to rededicate themselves to not bear silent witness to injustice and to always remain vigilant to the principles of a just society. It is signed today by the Council President, Nancy Navarro, and by me. Would you like to say a few words?